and welcome to the Keys to Therapy. Today we have a special guest. We have Jessie here. Hi, Jessie. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for showing up. So, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, definitely.
Great.
So, my name's Jessie. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Sacramento, California.
Ooh,
Uh, I've been licensed for 10 years, practicing working in the field for, probably going on 15. I don't know, lost count.
wow.
And I recently started a private practice here in Sacramento. So I am navigating the wonderful world of being a business owner and yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Exciting. Yay, congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, on your journey to being a therapist, since you've had a good amount of experience at this point, starting from the very beginning, what made you even decide to become a therapist? How'd you get in this path?
That's a good question and something that I also love to ask other therapists because
Yeah.
everybody's journey is just so different and unique and yet also similar at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in that group of people who I figured out very young in high school that this was the direction I wanted to go. I took
Mm-hmm.
a psychology class, fell in love with the material, and just was kind of moving in that direction ever since. But unlike, well, I don't know, maybe a lot of people can relate to this, but I had a lot of points over the course of my career where I was trying to figure out again, why am I doing this? This is hard. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
moments where I felt like this isn't quite what I thought it would be. And that started from grad school. So, like I said, fell in love with psychology, studied that in my undergrad, went to grad program, actually started out as a PsyD
Oh,
and thought, this is not working. This is
yeah.
not what I thought it was going to be. This doesn't feel good for me.
Mm.
Took some time to kind of reflect on that and figure out what am I doing with my life, and then came back into a marriage and family therapy program, and it was just such a better fit. And I really realized that I tend to view things from this relational lens. And
Mm.
so marriage and family therapy was just such a better fit for me compared to the PsyD program and working towards a psychologist license.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that you pivoted though. Like that's really brave to make
Mhm.
that decision. I feel like that would have freaked a lot of people out to go on such a clear path and then change it so
Mhm.
drastically. So good for you.
Thank you. Well, that is like the theme of my whole career is pivoting and redirecting going in a different direction and,
Hmm.
asking myself, what is this working for me? Is this what I want to be doing? So there are a lot of times where I think we go into this field thinking, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I
Hmm.
want to do. This is what I see myself doing. And you get to those places and realize, oh, this isn't what I thought it would feel like.
Hmm.
So from going from a PsyD to an MFT program, navigating different specialties, working in a variety of settings, I've just been all over the place. But I think that that is what has helped me figure out how to feel fulfilled and really be successful in this field.
Yeah, I think that's a good point though, because every decision you made was about you. Here's what I feel most comfortable with. Here's what is most aligned with where I'm at. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of programs teach us the opposite. It's
Mhm.
like be what the client needs, show up for the client. And especially in the beginning when you're seeing sort of any and everybody, it's
Mhm.
very much like you need to fit who you're seeing versus you figuring out what fits you.
Yes.
And a lot of people lose their identity as a therapist and just kind of conform to where they're at or who they're seeing instead of really paying attention to why certain things or populations or diagnoses or whatever it is don't feel right.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you took chances. I feel like that's why you ended up in the space you are. And so many people are so scared to do that, but
Yeah.
it's really beneficial.
Yeah. If I went back and like talked to my younger self when I was just starting out in the field, I know I would have said, I can see myself saying this. I don't want to sit in a room all day talking to couples about their problems. And that's
Hmm.
exactly what I'm doing right now, and I love it. So,
Right.
you know, I to me, that's just highlights the importance of being able to learn and grow individually within
Hmm.
this field. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the work that I'm doing with couples, my specialty in infidelity. None of that really would have come about because I had this idea of what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah. I've seen that a lot with people who are new therapists where they come in going, well, I know I want to work with kids. And then they do their first like internship or practicum and then they start working with kids and they're like, no. And now they have this whole identity crisis of who they're going to be as a therapist because they went in with this clear-cut plan and it just wasn't what they thought.
Yeah.
So I think what you're explaining is a really good example of saying like at different points in your life, you may be more likely to be attracted to different populations or need different things or go to some place you never thought. I mean, I had a similar experience with I really liked working with teens and young adults. And then when I worked with the military, I was like, I don't know anything about this population. But then I
Mhm.
realized they have all the same issues as young adults. They're figuring
Yeah.
out their identity. They are working within this system that isn't always the most supportive and they feel very childlike. They,
Mhm.
when they retire, it's almost like graduating from college and figuring out what's my career going to be. And so, yeah, sometimes it's a really good thing to put yourself outside of your comfort zone
Mhm.
and see what fits. And you may be
Mhm.
surprised.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
And
cool.
we're not taught a lot of things in our grad programs.
Hmm.
And so you don't know things until you go out and experience them. Infidelity is a really interesting thing to specialize in because I don't know
Yeah.
if people just say, I really want to work with couples struggling with infidelity because it's one of the most complex and difficult
Yeah.
relational experiences to work with a couple. And
Hmm.
so, it's something for me that I found, in the work that I was doing when I moved into private practice and started to work with more couples the infidelity piece was showing up in my office quite a bit, and I thought, well,
Mm.
this is interesting. But I was drawn to it, and I leaned into it. I explored and did my own self-study, my own went through trainings and realized, okay, I think I can do this. And now, fast forward, this is what I want to be doing. But I would
Mhm.
have never thought that, when I first started working with couples.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of therapists who say that's for sure. Something they're not going to do. Like, I can't do couples. I feel like that's one of the
Yeah.
biggest things I hear.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
From from MFTs, which is always so interesting to me, is that's
Yeah.
the core of our license is to look at
Hmm.
things from that relational point of view. And then it's just
Yeah.
interesting to meet other licensed marriage and family therapists who say, "Oh, I don't want to work with couples."
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's like the M of it. So, but yeah, I think it's interesting. So I want to know because I've never done any kind of training in couples work. The most that I've experienced with couples has been somebody bring their partner in for like a session or two to help them, the partner understand my client or something along those lines. So I'm really curious on your end, what do you think makes like couples therapy different than individual? Like, what are some of the unique aspects of it?
Another good question. Individual work compared to couples work, they're very different. And I
Hmm.
do find that a lot of therapists try to work with couples as if you're working with an individual. And you'll find the therapist will feel like you're not really getting anywhere, and the couple feels that as well because there is such a difference in how you approach the work. So with individuals, what is happening in the room is you are kind of a witness to their journey and you're supporting that person gaining insight into who they are and how they function, how they move through the world. And you're kind of walking alongside them as they're going through that process. Couples, it's very different. I like to say that you are trying to clear a path for them to start to move forward and walk along that path themselves.
Mm.
But you're much more of kind of I don't want to say a teacher, but you are trying to help them um, like shine a light on where their patterns and cycles are, the things that are getting them stuck and kind of at a
Hmm.
standstill. Um, to me, working with couples is very much like you're trying to to figure out, okay, well, couples, there's so much work that is patterns and cycles that you're trying
Mm.
to uncover. So there's like a
Mm-hmm.
puzzle you're trying to figure out, and then you
Yeah.
have to help the couple understand those things and those dynamics that are keeping them stuck. Um, so there's a lot of helping couples try to understand themselves as a person, understand
Mm-hmm.
the dynamics of what's going on between the two of them, and then giving them information so that they can create change outside of session. But they're so stuck in their patterns and cycles that
Mm-hmm.
it's a very slow process. You kind of feel like you're having the same session over and over sometimes because they're so easily stuck in their patterns.
That makes sense. I feel like it's kind of double the work
Yes.
also, which is side note
Yeah.
crazier that insurance often pays less if you're
Yeah.
billing like family or couples.
Mhm.
Insane. But yeah,
Yeah.
because then you've got two people with all these histories, family
Yeah.
stuff, their own traumas, their own dis diagnoses, symptoms, whatever.
Mhm.
And then now you're trying to get them to come together and see that, have them own their own pieces of it
Yeah.
while also figuring out what's going on with their partner. Like that's a lot of work on the therapist's end too.
It is, and it's so easy to get lost in the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of supervision and training with therapists, and especially around working with couples. And what I see more often than not is the therapist is just meeting the couple where they're at, right? That's kind of what we're taught. That's what you do
Yeah.
with individuals. Where are you at? What's going on? Let's work through what's happening here and now in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do that with couples, you're just going to end up putting out the fire of the week. You know, what did you fight
Yeah.
about this week? Let's talk about it. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's that on repeat. So now you've just become a part of their conflict cycle, their communication patterns. You just became a part of their system. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why working with couples is so challenging and so just slow is you have to try to remain outside of their cycles, being
Mm-hmm.
able to help them understand it and then find those intervention points so that they can start to do something differently. But if you just approach it as where are you at? Well, let's talk about
Yeah.
what's going on. You're gonna just be going through the same conversation on repeat.
That makes a lot of sense. And then you're fighting over like who didn't do the dishes this week. And that's the entire hour of the
Yeah,
session
yeah,
versus why somebody feels like they're pulling more of the weight in the family or something
yeah.
that's like the bigger issue. That
Mhm.
makes sense. So definitely a lot of refereeing, I'm sure. And then also
Yeah,
looking for like the bigger things that are going
yes.
on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how did you get from doing some of the couples work to then specializing in infidelity? Like, and how do you approach clients who are dealing with that as a couple differently than clients who aren't?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't ever really seek out working with infidelity. It's just
Hmm.
something that kept showing up in my office. I think because my therapeutic style is fairly direct and I
Mm,
have a bit more solution minded, which goes well with couples. Like we
yeah.
were just talking about all these complexities about relationship dynamics and you needing to be able to pull the couple out of these patterns, out of these cycles. Having a really direct style is going to be helpful. And I think couples
Hmm.
want that because they've
Yeah.
been in therapy with the therapist who kind of sits back and just kind of lets them fight. And that's
Hmm.
where you end up with couples yelling, screaming, and, slamming their door on their way out.
I've heard
So,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So my style is a bit more direct. So I started to get couples that were just at really difficult phases of their relationship or going
Mm,
through really complex relationship problems like infidelity.
yeah.
And for me, I was just drawn to the complexity of that. I like to really get to the deeper understanding of what's going on and what are all the things that contributed to that specific problem.
Hmm.
So I ended up I do get a lot of infidelity. I get a lot of divorce and separation, people
Oh,
who are
wow.
considering how to exit a relationship that they've been in for a long time. So I draw in couples that are going through very difficult situations. And I personally just like the challenge of it. Uh,
Yeah.
so I got more and more of these infidelity cases coming into my office and I found the work with those couples to be so meaningful and so powerful if they're willing to face that issue head on.
Mm,
Infidelity is something that has so much bias and strong
yeah.
opinions and misconceptions that there's so much you have to work through just to get to a point of being able to repair and recover from those experiences. But when you do, it's some of the most powerful work that I've seen in therapy in general, just the most transformation and change within
Mm,
individuals and with a couple that I haven't been able to really experience in any other setting or any other kind of issue that comes up.
yeah. I feel like that'd be so rewarding because that's also
Mhm.
probably one of the hardest things that people are going through, but it makes sense to
Yeah,
be some of the hardest work, but then that would also give like the best rewards as well.
exactly. So
Oh.
that was part of my career journey of figuring out what is the work that brings me the most fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
And this happened to be it. It's
Yeah.
difficult and it's slow and there's of course moments where I think, why am I doing this? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's so hard. But if you stick with it, like I said, there's just some incredible transformation that can happen.
Yeah. Can
So
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you had asked about how do I work with these
Mm-hmm.
couples, and there is very specific things that I have found that are important to do. So most couples, when they're coming in for infidelity,
Mm-hmm.
there's typically been a recent discovery. So the infidelity has probably, it's not, most infidelities are not just a single incident that happens. It's something that's been occurring over time. And so there's this buildup of stress and emotions that kind of reach a peak once it's discovered. Once there's information that validates, okay, there's something that is really that's wrong that's going on in the relationship. That discovery is usually what triggers couples to come into therapy. So the first thing you're doing is stabilization, this kind
Okay.
of crisis stabilization of getting both partners to a place where they can feel a little bit more emotionally regulated because that discovery just brings about so much stress.
Yeah.
The next thing I do is really work on addressing misconceptions and bias around infidelity. So couples, like most people, we're, taught different things about what infidelity is and what it's
Mm-hmm.
not. And most things are not accurate. They're not what couples are actually experiencing in reality. So
Mm-hmm.
the biggest example is that most people view infidelity as something that's inherently wrong. If someone engages in cheating or betrayal, they have something wrong with them. This relationship is broken. There's no opportunity to fix it, so you might as well just leave. In fact, you should leave, and there's
Mm.
something wrong with you if you stay. So,
Yeah, like the person who cheats gets so villainized, and then the
mhm.
person that's like the victim is almost shamed if they say or
Yeah,
looked down upon, like they don't have the self-respect. Like it's so polarizing. It's very, very heavy judgment coming
yeah,
for both parties, actually.
yes. So
Wow.
I spend a lot of time addressing that specifically and helping them to
Yeah.
understand that at least in this room, there is not going to be any kind of judgment or criticism about either partner. And we're going to face that shame that both people are feeling head on because that's such a crucial part of healing and recovery from infidelity. And as a therapist, you don't want to be doing anything that's going to add to that shame. So
Yeah.
spend a lot of time just addressing those misconceptions, helping them to explore what are your beliefs about infidelity and how is that influencing how you're responding to these situations that you've been going through.
That makes sense though. And I think that's really helpful even for individual therapists like me, because
Yeah.
I see a lot of clients who are experiencing infidelity. Maybe they were the one who, was the person doing it. Maybe they were the one who it happened to. I can also think of a few recent examples of clients who it's occurred within their family.
Yeah.
And so then it's how do they process and try not to villainize this person who's maybe been a parent or a sibling or somebody who's been really important to them who's done this terrible thing and now the whole family's ruptured. Like I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of layers to it. So the
Mhm.
way you are describing approaching it, I feel like would be very helpful for
Mhm.
individual therapists to focus first on like the crisis stabilization part. I think that makes a lot of sense because it is a crisis
Mhm.
within the family even. And then I think like you said, kind of break down some of these like black and white thinking patterns
Yeah.
that come with infidelity, because I think we've all been trained, even just in like a society way. I think of all the old school like Enquirer magazines and like the tabloids and all the things would be like so and so
Mhm.
cheated and this person stayed, and it just was very dramatized and
Yeah.
villainized. So I think that that makes sense. And like I said, even from an individual standpoint, I could see how that would be really helpful to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
So once once I've addressed some of those misconceptions and kind of
Hmm.
cleared out some of the self-induced shame from our
Yeah.
ideas and beliefs about infidelity, then we get into the work. So at
Mm.
this point, we haven't really even touched the infidelity. Um, so the work with these couples, I see it as having these three phases. The
Okay.
first two are kind of intertwined a little bit and a bit more nuanced. Um, and then the third, well, I'll get to that in a second. So the first is really looking at what are the things within this relationship that allowed space for the infidelity to occur? It's
Hmm.
not to say that the relationship was broken or flawed, but relationships, as we know, need to be nurtured and maintained over time. And there's so much happening in life that pulls you away from that process.
Hmm.
So we need to be able to have a shared understanding by both partners. What are the things that contributed to weakening the relationship to a point so that this one of the partners started to get their needs met somewhere else? Um, and I say specifically shared understanding because both partners have contributed to that. So
Hmm.
a big part of infidelity work is looking at it from this we perspective. We have both done something to contribute to this. We have both um, experienced the impact of the infidelity incidents or behaviors,
Hmm.
and we're both going to work together to heal and recover from this. So I start that foundation from the beginning by saying, how did we both contribute to what happened?
That's nice.
The second phase is looking at the direct impact and damage from the infidelity. So,
Mm.
infidelity is like everything more complex than we might realize. It involves, of course, crossing of boundaries, both some form of intimate boundary, whether it's emotional or physical or both. And that's what we generally understand and know what infidelity is. It's more than just having sex with another person. Maybe
Right.
you had this emotional connection and relationship. Maybe there was
Hmm.
some inappropriate flirting. And it also doesn't even have to be with a person. You can also experience these crossing of boundaries with things um, like porn use or
Yeah.
cam girls or
Right.
these
AI
other,
nowadays.
yes, AI.
Hmm.
Um, so we have to understand that we know, okay, infidelity is when you've crossed an intimate boundary within the relationship. But the other piece that is so damaging about infidelity is the deceit. So
Hmm.
infidelity typically is going to have some level of deceit, and the
Hmm.
more severe that deceit is and how long lasting that deceit has gone on for, that's where most of the damage comes from.
That makes sense. That's
So
usually what people are kind of ruminating on. Now the
yeah.
trust is broken. Now I don't know what to do from here. And a lot of the anxiety comes from that.
Yes, absolutely.
That makes sense.
So we have to look at what's the damage that's been done from the infidelity incidents or experience, as I like to call it. And so we're
Hmm.
kind of working those two phases simultaneously for a while. How did we get here, and what was the impact? And once we've progressed through that, then we move into phase three, which is the recovery piece. How do we
Hmm.
repair this relationship so that we are stronger than where we were before?
Hmm. Yeah, it kind of closed the gaps on
Hmm.
anything that maybe led to some of this to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that makes sense. I like that you have it sort of one, two, three. So I feel like that makes it easier to conceptualize what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And I feel like that would empower therapists to feel like there's more of a plan than
Mhm.
just here's a theory
Mhm.
or see what they come in with this week and let's go from there. I
Right.
think there's both of those things can be good, but I don't think they're as practical as we would
Mhm.
love for them to be. So I feel like your step by step process makes a lot of sense. It also could help get buy-in from clients, I would think, to
Mhm.
explain to them, like, this is how it's going to go, because I'm sure a lot of them come in high emotions and want to get straight to recovery. How do we fix that?
Mhm.
So that's not going to
Exactly. And
work.
that's where I think most comfortable or most therapists feel comfortable is that's
Hmm.
where EFT, Gottman, all the modalities that we use to work with couples
Hmm.
really come into play in that repair work. And
Uh,
so, but now you're endorsing the idea of let's just move past it. Let's move on and just
hmm.
like almost like pretend like this didn't happen and we'll start working on repairing the relationship. And that feels good for the couple and for the therapist. But what's
Yeah.
happening is the foundation is really fractured. And so you
Hmm.
might make some progress in it and could look like things are going really well. But the emotional damage and injuries to the relationship are still there and it's going to get re-triggered. It's going, the couples are
Yeah.
going to kind of relapse back into what's happened. So at least if you have this idea of approaching, these three different steps or phases, you can use your training and your therapeutic
Hmm.
style, the approaches that make sense to you, but you're helping the couple move through healing and recovering in a deeper way that's going to have more long-lasting effect.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like you said relapse, and that made me think of substance abuse. How some people are like, I'm just going to quit cold turkey. But if you haven't figured out the source of why you're using to begin with and replace it with healthier coping skills, you're
Mhm.
definitely going to relapse. So it makes sense that it'd be the same type of thing with an issue like this.
Yeah. There's a lot of similarity between substance use treatment and trauma treatment. In fact,
Mm,
I look at infidelity very much through a lens of trauma.
that makes sense,
That
though.
something has happened that's completely ruptured not only the relationship, but shattered your whole sense of reality, especially for
Yeah.
the partner who discovered the infidelity and
Hmm.
is facing the impact of the deceit.
And safety is challenged now at this
Yeah.
point, too, which makes sense why it'd be similar
Mhm.
to trauma in that way.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So there's this dual healing process that's also really important to understand about infidelity is that you have two partners who've experienced something together, but in two very different ways. So
Hmm.
the person who engaged in the infidelity is really struggling with and has to heal from intense guilt and shame.
Hmm.
That this is not something that most people feel. What I mean to say is that most people who engage in infidelity it's not something that they see as who they are as a person. It goes
Yeah.
against their sense of self and their morality, and so they're challenged with reconciling that. How can I be the type of person to do this to someone I love and care about?
Right.
And it's so deeply shameful that they want to just move past it. The
Hmm.
partner who engaged in infidelity often just says, "Can we just move on?"
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to help them feel better, um,
Hmm.
and to deal with that shame. The person who discovered the infidelity, though, is dealing with, like you mentioned, a lot of intense anxiety,
Hmm.
problems with self-esteem and
Yeah.
confidence. They're trying to figure out what's real and not real. That's the impact of the deceit.
Yeah, it's a big one
Kind
I've
of
heard.
I always say that your world's shattered and now we're trying to put all these pieces together and you don't even have all the pieces because
Yeah.
you don't have all the information really that you might need.
Hmm.
So that person, that partner needs to talk about it. They need information, they need reassurance. And
Hmm.
that directly goes against what the other partner needs.
Right. They're ready to move on, and the other person wants all the details. They're on like totally opposite sides of the spectrum, and that creates a lot of
Exactly.
conflict too.
Exactly. So when couples try to deal with this on their own, what tends to
Hmm.
happen is those kind of dual healing processes actually work against each other. The
Hmm.
person who engaged in infidelity wants to move past it, avoid it, which directly contributes to increased anxiety and self-esteem issues for the other partner. And
Yep.
they want to talk about it, which directly makes the other person feel more guilt and more shame. So it
Yeah.
devolves very easily.
Ooh,
So
I've seen that. That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like parallel, like with attachment styles. Someone's anxious and someone's avoidant. So it's like the
yeah,
more avoidant this person is, the more anxious this one's gonna get, and it
yeah,
just blows up.
yeah.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So bringing in that we perspective again, that kind
Hmm.
of that we mentality, we are going to work through this together. I'm going to do things to support your healing and recovery, and you're going to do things to support my healing and recovery. And instead of devolving, kind of spiraling down and
Yeah.
pulling partners further away from each other, we're going to work together to move it in this other direction where we heal and come together and create a stronger connection and stronger trust out of it. But you can't, it's really hard to do that on your own. I'm not saying couples can't, but you need someone to help guide you in that direction because you're naturally, your instinct is to do these things that are going to pull you apart.
Yeah, I think that that makes so much sense. And it's having seen clients who are experiencing either side of those. I always am like, you need to be in couples therapy
Yeah.
because I can help you work on your side of things. But at the end of the day, like you can't take the tools we're working on and apply them to your relationship without your partner having
Mhm.
their own set of tools and you guys figuring this out together because I've seen it twisted a lot as well where it's like, well, my therapist said that I should be figuring out my anxiety and be asking you all the details. I need
Mhm.
screenshots. I need sharing location. They need all of these things because that's what they heard from their session, their takeaway. So I
Mhm.
think also the benefit of couples therapy is if you have both people there getting the same information at the same time, there is more of that we mentality
Yeah,
versus this us, or me versus you type of thing.
right.
So, yeah. So, do you typically recommend if a couple's experiencing that that they do individual therapy at the same
I
time?
I don't
Okay.
because it's too many cooks in the
Yeah.
kitchen. And with individual therapy, you just have one perspective.
hmm
And there's an inherent bias when you're working with an individual to validate their narrative.
Yeah.
You're not getting any other information, and that's what we're there to do, is to support and validate and kind of and reflect back to that person what they're feeling. So
hmm
unfortunately, that works directly against this process because
Yeah.
they have to do it together. Uh,
hmm
so again, I don't recommend that. I'm not saying it's not
Yeah, then
going
it
to
can't
be
work.
problematic, but
hmm
it would I have just seen time and time again through like just my real-time experience that that usually creates more confusion and
hmm
often ends up with either one or both partners feeling going through like what I call a re-injury, that we're kind of being re-traumatized, even kind of going through this
hmm
infidelity again in a way that just adds to that emotional damage.
Yeah, so I feel like the only way it could work is if you have an individual therapist who is very clear on what the boundaries are and
Mhm.
what's the couple's work that needs to happen in those sessions versus what's their work as the individual
Yeah,
therapist. So
yeah,
I know on my end, that's why I almost always, if there's something that major going on in the relationship, tell them that they really need to be in couples therapy to work on that. Because, like you said, with the information I have, there could be big chunks missing and they may
mhm,
not even realize it. It might not be like that they're, intentionally withholding aspects of the story. They may
yeah,
just not have been aware of how they've contributed if they're the one that's been
right,
hurt. And
right,
so if I have the one who has been the one that has done the infidelity, then we do a lot of exploring, figure out reasons why, what it's connected to,
yeah,
attachment things, things like that that could be helpful. But I try to leave a lot of the couples work to the couples therapist.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
feel like sometimes therapists have this I gotta fix it all mentality.
yeah,
And I know that's out of my scope. So I feel like as long as the individual therapist can understand more about their role and be
mhm,
willing to defer some of that other work to someone else who has the training for it, it can work. But I
yeah.
don't think many would
Mhm.
think that way. So,
Well, what you're describing is that you can do that work in like what I'm calling phase one,
yeah.
exploring what are all the contributing factors to the infidelity. What are the
hmm
things that I did? What are some aspects about the relationship? What do I see in my partner?
Yeah.
That can absolutely be done in an individual setting. But the healing and recovery piece,
hmm
in order for it to be deep and long lasting, has to be done conjointly
Oh,
because
I
you
agree. Yeah.
really need your partner to help you heal, and it's in both directions.
Yeah. Yeah. And you, again, you would have the tools to be able to see them both at the same time and make
Yeah.
sure that all information is passed out and there's a joint plan. Because, like I said,
Mhm.
I've seen an individual very much well, their therapist said this, and it's like,
Mhm.
Now you guys are using us against each other because
Yeah,
we're not in the same place to fact check. So
yeah,
I think that that makes a lot of sense. They feel like recovery, even with doing all of that prep work, you're still going to have some bumps in the road. So to be able to handle that at this, to see them and not have this, what's the word, triangulation happening because you're all in the same place, hearing all the same information, making the same plans at the same time is going
yeah.
to be a lot more effective.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that makes sense. But well, with couples who are wanting to work with this population, they want to work with infidelity, or therapists, I mean, that want to work with couples that want to work with infidelity.
Hmm.
What do you recommend that they do to start down that path or get more information?
So I do think that, of course, in any specialty, there's going to be a need for additional trainings. There's a lot of trainings, a lot of books you can read. But infidelity in particular, I think you really are pulling from a lot of different modalities. I know
Hmm.
that I'm using a lot of CBT, DBT, narrative work, Gottman, EFT, all of those things, trauma-informed care, all of those things
Yeah.
are coming into play. So you're probably more prepared clinically than you might realize. The more important work I think when I am doing supervision or training on infidelity is encouraging therapists to check their own bias and
Mm,
challenge the misconceptions around infidelity, so that they're not coming into the room bringing anything that could potentially add to the shame that either partner is feeling. It's
hmm.
so important to do this work from a unbiased, non-judgmental standpoint, which you think, well, we're therapists. Of course, we're going to be unbiased and non-judgmental, but
Have you
that's
met
not,
enough of us?
yeah.
There's,
But
we joined a Facebook group. You'll see
yeah.
very quickly.
But we're human. We're
Yeah.
still people, and
Yep.
we've had our own lived experiences. I mean, we watch
Hmm.
movies.
Yep.
We are impacted as well by society's view of infidelity, and we
Hmm.
need to challenge that and check it at the door because you need to be able to go in and sit with a couple and let them tell you about their experience and work with the information they're giving you rather than saying, oh, that's not infidelity, or this is why that happened. They need to
Yeah.
be able to figure that out for themselves. And um, I just can't tell you the amount of stories I've heard from couples or individuals that are getting support around this where they've had a therapist, you know, just be judgy and,
Yeah. Or
and
align. I've
yeah,
seen that too. Align with one person
yeah,
over the other. And that bias
yeah,
clearly comes through in the sessions to the point
yeah,
that eventually they quit. Or like you said earlier, like it does further damage if
yeah,
it's not correct. So
exactly. So if
yeah.
you can't sit with someone who's engaged in infidelity behavior and be
Hmm.
open-minded to that, then this is probably not the work for you. And that's
Hmm.
okay,
Yeah.
That is absolutely okay. But we have to be able to sit with a client who's engaged in infidelity and be open-minded to why did
Hmm.
they engage in those behaviors, but also sit with the person who discovered the infidelity and be open to why are you staying in this relationship? Because there's such a strong misconception and bias about, like I said earlier, that this is broken. You shouldn't stay,
Yeah.
there's no point to this. And that needs to be as far away from this work as possible.
Hmm.
And the other thing that I do think is so important for therapists who want to work with these couples is we actually touched on this earlier, is to go really, really slowly. Like
Hmm.
I said, a lot of therapists jump right into repair work, and you're
Yeah.
missing so much important conversations that need to be facilitated with these couples. And just sitting with certain emotions together is so important. So I have found that therapists don't know what to do with that. They don't know what to do with the crisis point. They don't know what to do with kind of how did we get here? So let's just figure it. Let's just jump into skills and strategies to have
Right.
better communication and to,
Yeah.
you know, have more connection. And that's great. It's just you need to go a lot slower before you jump into that.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that you said that. That was something I noted earlier. When you said slow, I feel like that is so scary, especially for newer therapists, because you're so focused on the outcomes And that's what feels like that's the most productive, and that's what's a successful session. Oh, we
Yeah.
had a great outcome today. They did this homework. They are talking well, whatever the thing is. And I think sometimes some of these things, especially this level of work, is going to be kind of you're in it for the long haul.
Yes.
So slow
Yeah.
is good, slow and steady. That also ensures that they have time to work on the things you're actually talking about
Mhm.
instead of just talking about it and then leaving the session. And now you jumped on to the next thing next time.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's going to make it a lot more productive.
Yeah. There's so a lot of my work is also informed by Esther Perel,
Hmm.
as you can tell, I pull from a lot of different modalities. I have read a lot of her work as well and bring in her theories and concepts into sessions. And there's something I'm gonna mess this up, but she talks about how long it takes to really heal from infidelity.
Hmm.
I don't know exactly the number, but
Yeah.
it's a long time. It's
Yeah.
years.
Wow.
And so when I'm working with a couple, I inevitably say that at some point or
Hmm.
multiple points in our work together is that this is not going to happen overnight. It's not even
Hmm.
going to happen within 6 months, which is kind of what we think of as traditional therapy is, 6 to 8 months.
Right. Especially for like a
Um,
crisis.
hmm This is work. I'm working with couples for years to
Hmm.
really heal and recover from this. And so that's something I often tell therapists when they're learning about working with infidelity is you have to go slow, you have to be patient, you have to be able to tolerate when things are not going well, and that it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that you're not doing a good job. Infidelity is going to have re-injury. They're going to have backslides. I also like to use this metaphor of a false start, where you're kind of
Mm.
working along and then you realize, oh, the infidelity is not actually over. There's still contact with that person, or there's something that kind of brings us back to the starting point. And you have to be
Yeah.
really comfortable as a therapist working with that and giving your couple hope that that's okay, that that's going to happen and we can still continue forward.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's like you were saying with substance abuse earlier, like relapse is part of recovery. So kind of that sort of thing. Plus, I
Mhm.
mean, if they're experiencing that, then that's showing you where there's maybe still some cracks and places that need more work and attention.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I feel like I've learned so much today, which I really appreciate. And I can think of a few different clients now who have been experiencing this within their families that would
Mhm.
be really helpful to even pass some of this information to them
Yeah.
to
Yes.
understand the process. Because I think when there is, like for everybody, some sort of trauma, crisis, something, all you want is for things to be good again and easy again.
Yeah.
And if people really understand all of the layers within this, then I think they can kind of buy into the process a little bit better, knowing
Yeah.
like it's going to take time. It's okay if it's slow. There needs to be a lot of heavy foundational work that maybe
Mhm.
wasn't even done in the beginning of the relationship. And that's part of why
Yeah.
this happened.
Yeah.
So I think that that will be really helpful. So starting Monday. I can think of somebody already I'm gonna share this with. But so I again appreciate you coming in and talking about all of this because I don't have any training in anything with couples. So for me personally, this was really insightful. And I know that it's such a niche. And then you niche down again into infidelity. So I
Mhm.
think it's really cool that this is a population you're working with because I think not only is there a really big need for it, but I think there's going to continue to need to be that for two reasons. One, because people have so much access to other people nowadays that I think that it feels like it's increased how much infidelity is actually happening and how many relationship issues are happening. So I think that's huge. I think the other part of it is, like I said earlier, this type of work can intimidate people working with couples in general and definitely working in this space. So for you to have that niche, it's so important for other therapists like me to be able to say, I know the perfect person for you and send them your way because we need people who are doing this type of hard work out here. So I love that you found a space that you're thriving in as a therapist. It's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, for some of the new therapists out here, before we go, is there any additional tips, advice, suggestions, anything that you want to provide out here to the audience?
So many. I could just talk about that for
Right.
all day. But I think what I share time and time again is just being flexible with yourself, and
Mhm.
kind of like what we touched on earlier is being willing to pivot, being
Yeah.
willing to move in different directions and not get stuck on the idea of what you're supposed to be doing, or kind of what you thought you wanted. Don't
Hmm.
force it. You know, this
Yeah.
career is so challenging. There's so much personal and professional growth that's happening the entire time. I'm not even, I say this to even licensed folks who've been working in the field for a long time, is
Hmm.
that you need to be able to ask yourself again and again, why am I doing this work? And
Yeah.
being able to answer that for yourself in an authentic way.
Hmm.
So be flexible, be patient, show yourself grace, and move in the directions that either you are being drawn to, or like what happened in my life a few times, that you're kind of being pushed in that direction.
Right.
Just be willing to go with it. Um, there's no finish line in this career. And so if you start out with that flexibility within yourself,
Hmm.
you will find the place where you need to be, the place
Hmm.
that is going to feel fulfilling, that's going to feel comfortable, where you feel like this job is working for you rather than you're working for the job.
Yeah, that's so important, especially because we don't have a job that you can check out of. So, like we don't have an office job where you're typing emails or you're doing data entry or something that you can sort of zone out a little bit, dissociate, walk around, take a break. Like you can't do that when you're sitting there present. You have to be 100% present.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a really important point about you need it to work for you. And I think that's sometimes why there's such high levels of burnout or like dissatisfaction with this career is people forcing themselves to fit into certain places or
Yeah.
spaces that they think they should be.
Yeah. I say embrace the dissatisfaction, but explore why it's there and use that information to guide you in a new and different direction.
Yeah.
Don't just be complacent with it. Oh well, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, so it is what it is, and
Hmm.
I'm just gonna like force myself to stay in this place. You don't have to. I think that
Hmm.
even now more than any time before, there's so much opportunity
Yeah.
to do something different, to create, to, like I always say, position yourself in a way that you feel successful. You get to decide and define what success means for you.
Hmm.
It's just you have to figure that out along the way.
Yeah. And pivoting's part of that. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
yay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us about all of this stuff today. And like I said, I feel like I learned a lot and understanding like your process with the steps. I think
Mhm.
that will be so helpful. Like I said, in even my work individually with telling clients what to expect and honestly what they should be expecting in
Yeah.
couple sessions. And if they're not getting that with their couples therapists,
Mhm.
they might not be the best fit.
Yeah.
So I've had
Yeah.
that happen a few times. But yeah, I think it's been super helpful. So thank you for all the work you do so that, like I said, people like me have someone to refer to. And
Thank you.
I appreciate you doing this today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just
Yay.
glad to be able to be here and talk about these experiences, because it's just so helpful to hear other therapists talk about the work that they do. It helps us learn. So thank you for having
Absolutely.
me.
Yeah, of course. So if you guys want to stay ahead of future episodes, go ahead and hit subscribe and tune in. But other than that, I will see you next time. Thank you.